Let's have a look and see what's new on Amazon Prime this Halloween from the 17th of October to the 30th of October. First up this week is a big Hollywood movie. It's called Boiler Room from year 2000. It's one of the first films with Vin Diesel, but it also stars Giovanni Ribisi, Scott Caan, Tom Everett Scott, and Ben Affleck. It's a pretty good cast. It's a very standard crime drama from the period about a college dropout who gets a job as a broker for a suburban investment firm, which puts him on the fast track to success, but the job might not be as legitimate as it sounds. It sounds absolutely cracking for the cast. It's not exactly an action thriller, however it's a tangled web of deceit and lies. Tabloid Vivant is a horror drama about a painter and art critic who romanticize each other's obsession with fame and decide to collaborate on a project they believe will revolutionize the art world. They are determined to make a painting come to life even if it kills them. It looks incredibly artsy, if that's your sort of thing. But it's getting fantastic reviews from various reviewers online, so maybe it's for an arty type crowd. Red Riding Hood is a fantasy horror film with Amanda Seyfried and Lucas Haas. Gary Oldman's in there too. About a medieval village that's haunted by a werewolf and a young girl who finds an orphaned woodcutter, much to her family's displeasure. An orphaned woodcutter. I'm guessing this is a teenager who's already established as a woodcutter, as opposed to a child who aspires to be a woodcutter or something. I have seen this, and I can remember nothing about it at all. That must be a telling tale of the tale that's being told here. Hauling is a documentary that reveals the day-to-day life of Claudine's, a father to over 27 children, and the many others who make their living from collecting and recycling materials that others have thrown out in São Paulo, Brazil. Sounds distressing. 27 children. Wow. I can barely manage one. Malice Metamorphosis is a drama about Alice, who is haunted by a supernatural force and defending her town from the pending ecological disaster. Blazing Barriers is an adventure from 1937 about two young hoods from the city who are sent to a civilian conservation corps camp in the mountains to try to turn them away from the life of crime that they're headed for. The Student of Mr. Henry is about an elderly curmudgeon who's let out his room in a large apartment rent-free to a young student on the condition that she does everything in her power to ruin her son's marriage. Seems to be a lot of high praise for this French comedy. That one person even went as far to describe it as beautiful, moving, intelligent, and an uplifting experience. When his daughter goes missing from their prairie town in the east of France, Alain and his young son, Kid, head out to find her. The journey takes the men to some far-off and unsettling places in what begins to feel like an endless quest. This French drama sounds actually kind of interesting because it's an interesting setting for a drama and a journey into an area that's probably not covered very often in films and television. 3 French films in a row, eh? French Cuisine is about Francoise and Charlotte's marriage faces a crisis when their priorities differ. Francoise focuses on their hotel/restaurant success, while Charlotte dreams of having their first child. Alex, Charlotte's former husband, suddenly turns up when everyone thought him dead. Legally speaking, Alex is still married to Charlotte and is the owner of the restaurant. Sounds like an interesting tussle. Sounds like it could be quite dramatic and unsettling for a comedy. Grief. Zombie Cop is about, as if you couldn't work it out, I'll not even go there. During a drug raid, a narcotics officer confronts a strange voodoo priest named Dr. Death who is chanting. The officer and the priest shoot it out and they both wind up dead. Later, the two rise from their graves and return to the land of the living as zombies. Dr. Death is resurrected with a new mission in mind, to take over the world. But of course, the zombie cop enlists the aid of his old police buddies to stop the mad priest. Sounds fantastic. I'm not going to stop this now and just go and watch this. Bye. But wait a minute, why watch that when I can watch Kingdom of the Vampire? Both this movie and Zombie Cop are directed by J.R. Bookwalter, who is a director I respect greatly. I'm not making fun of this film in any way. It's a good old-fashioned horror film from 1991 about Jeff, who works the night shift. Then he comes home to his domineering mother, who has a grisly habit of slaughtering the neighbourhood children to satisfy her insatiable bloodlust. Anyone who doesn't know who J.R. Bookwalter is, he is a classic director from the 1980s and 90s who worked with the likes of Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell. And he's actually quite an inventive gore meister, and his films, whilst fairly unheard of and low rent, are actually really enjoyable if you're into the whole underground horror scene. Early comic book movie Tank Girl is here. This was totally underappreciated whenever it was first released back in 1995. However, now you can see that it's just it's a good, fun, low-budget movie with Laurie Petty playing a really spunky Gwen Stefani style action hero, and some mutant kangaroos and Malcolm McDowell and Ice-T all hamming it up very well. It's actually worth watching this again because it's so much fun. It didn't translate very well in 1995, but today, yeah, it's much better. Much, much better. Apache Women sounds like it's got an awful lot going for it. It's a spaghetti western exploitation movie from the 1970s, in which Tommy is an innocent cavalry officer who falls in love with a beautiful Apache woman after rescuing her from a nasty gun smuggler named Honest Jeremy. When Jeremy and his gang find Tommy, gruesome violence ensues. I guess this is a perfect time for this kind of thing to come on Amazon Prime around Halloween. It's an exploitation potboiler. And whilst a lot of these films tend to go under the radar, it's worth checking them out at least once every now and again, because the spaghetti western genre was a whole thing that really needs to be explored by anyone who's really into their film. It doesn't have great reviews, however I just imagine that this is probably quite typical of the time. And a lot of these Italian knockoffs are starting to be re-released and receiving the treatment that they're due because they're all becoming cult classics. This sounds like true horror. Dolly Parton and Roddy McDowall star in Unlikely Angel, where Dolly Parton plays Ruby Diamond, a brassy, sassy lounge singer. And when she meets her ultimate demise, Ruby is denied entrance to heaven by St. Peter, who's played by Roddy McDowall. To earn her wings, she must find a mother for a widowed father and his family in this endearing movie about hope and love. You know, it's designed for kids, apparently. Why the father can't go out and find a woman for himself and needs Dolly Parton to do it for him. Oh, no, never mind. Don't watch it. Eddie Presley. Okay, stay with me here. I'm going to run down the cast on this one. Dwayne Whittaker, Stacey Randall, Ian Ogilvy, Ted Raimi, Lawrence Tierney, Tom Everett, Tim Thomerson, Joe Estefez, Kitten Natividad, Bruce Campbell, and Quentin Tarantino. And directed by Jeff Burr, who did Leatherface, Stepfather 2, Pumpkinhead 2. Eddie Presley is an unheard of classic. Admittedly, whenever I said Bruce Campbell and Quentin Tarantino, there is the possibility they may not be in this cut, as there are two cuts of the film. Eddie Presley is an Elvis impersonator with a wounded psyche, unflinching his quest to keep the king's spirit alive as he bets it all for one night of glory. A headlining spot at a dingy Tinseltown dive. Something to scream about is a documentary about the actresses best known for the power of their lungs in the horror classics and cult favourites, as they discuss what it's like to work within the B-movie industry and have a career based in horror. Contributions from the likes of Julie Strain, George Romero, John Russo, Lilith Stabbs, Felissa Rose, and Judith O'Dea. Sounds like a pretty interesting documentary with a look into what it's like to be a scream queen. Platoon of the Dead is not an entry into the Dead series from George Romero. In fact, it's actually produced by J.R. Bookwalter. This is about 3 soldiers who must fight to survive the night in a seemingly abandoned house when a zombie platoon attacks. Reviews are not good for this. Some people saying it's somewhat middling. If that's a good review, that's about as best you can find. Fire in the Dark is about a 75-year-old widow who battles with herself as she struggles with being a burden to those she loves. Though determined not to rely on her children, she is forced to move in with her daughter after a serious fall, and the family learns to face the future with dignity and hope. I struggle to find what the benefits of this drama would be to society, as most of us will probably have to deal with something along these lines in the future if they haven't already had experience of it in the past. But I guess Lindsay Wagner needs to work, and Ray Wise is in there as well. But at 120 minutes long, I don't know if I would ever give any amount of time over to this. It sounds frightfully boring. Why She Cries is a drama about two sisters who are trying to repair their relationship while one keeps a dark secret from the other. After crossing paths with a wealthy woman who is dealing with an illness that has caused her husband to be resentful and ashamed of her, they come to an understanding that secrets among the average and the affluent are truly not that different. This sounds like another really boring movie as well. When Peter wins a medieval adventure promotion sponsored by a soda company, he wasn't expected to be transported back to 1383 by a 600-year-old spell. But he was, and now he's there, and he needs to do whatever it takes to stop evil Lord Draken from taking over the kingdom and somehow transport himself back to the 20th century. It's a kid in King Arthur's court, it's an army of darkness, but with a teenager. It's Teen Knight. Looks there's a trailer for it and it looks awful, absolutely awful. Direct-to-video rubbish from 1999. Ugh, avoid. Man with Two Brains, Steve Martin, Carl Reiner movie, Kathleen Turner from 1983. A terribly, terribly funny Young Frankenstein-style comedy about a recently widowed Dr. Michael Huffar, or however you pronounce it, who is the world's greatest neurosurgeon, and he injures Dolores Benedict in a car accident. He operates on her to save her life and uses a technique of his own invention, cranial screw-top brain entry. As Benedict recovers, Huffar falls in love with her, and they are soon married. However, Benedict is only interested in Huffar's money, and Huffar still yearns for his previous wife. They travel to Vienna to attend a medical conference where Huffar finally divorces Dolores and meets a mysterious Dr. Alfred Necessiter, who becomes entangled in a series of murders committed by the elevator killer. Wow, I've seen this movie many times and I didn't realise just how much happens in this movie, plot-wise. It's hilarious. It really is very, very funny. It's not quite as good as something like The Jerk, but it's a really good example of a mid-80s comedy. Check it out if you haven't seen it. It's one of Steve Martin's wackiest and zaniest comedies. Introducing the Dwights is a heartfelt comedy about a mother who tries to come between her son and his coming of age. Tim's mum, Jean, is a bawdy and risque comedienne, still hoping to make it big. His brother Mark helps his mother rehearse for her shows. Brenda Blethyn and Joe Brand star in this Australian comedy drama that gets pretty good reviews. Surprisingly, I'd never heard of it. Also known as Clubland, if that helps. Addicted to Love is a romantic comedy starring Meg Ryan, Kelly Preston and Matthew Broderick, directed by Griffin Dunn, about Maggie and Sam's former partners being in love. She wants revenge, and he wants to get his lost love back, so they work together to break up the happy couple. I remember this coming out and being marketed as somewhat of a slightly darker romantic comedy, and with the pairing of Meg Ryan and Matthew Broderick, it looked to be something worthwhile. However, it didn't do anything for me at all. I know some people who really love this film. Take it or leave it, I think. It's a bit of a misfire romantic comedy, if you ask me. Lost Souls with Winona Ryder and Ben Chaplin, about a small group of Catholics led by an ailing priest believe that Satan intends to become a man just as God did in the person of Jesus. The youngest of the group, a teacher named Maya Larkin, goes to Peter to investigate the possible vessel. Other signs come, leading to an ultimate showdown. Never heard of it. Quite like Ben Chaplin, and Winona Ryder seems to be on a career resurgence after Stranger Things, so maybe it might be worth checking out. Kandahar is a thriller set in Afghanistan in 1995. An airplane is forced to land at an airport in the capital of Islamic terrorism, the city of Kandahar. 5 Russian pilots are captured by the Taliban. They must live 378 days in hell unless they betray their country. Will they survive? A stressful true story that's actually more of a documentary, but mixed with an action movie. This does sound like a really good movie. Brutal and very truthful, the reviews state. Sounds like one to check out. A bigger splash, sadly, isn't the third in the Splash trilogy that needs to exist. In fact, it's a dazzling, sensuous portrayal of desire, jealousy and rock and roll Under the Mediterranean Sun, starring Ralph Fiennes, Dakota Fanning, and Tilda Swinton. The vacation of a famous rock star and filmmaker in Italy is disrupted by the unexpected visit of an old friend and his daughter. I have to highlight this because one of the reviews actually says, "Puke, vomit, wretch." Fair enough. Zodiac San Fran Psycho from 2006. A serial killer is stalking the city of San Francisco, sending a news reporter cryptic letters about each murder. As the body count rises, two San Francisco PD detectives, a reporter, a psychologist priest, relentlessly pursue the madman, determined to end his bloody carnage. It stars Joe Estefez again. It's also got Todd Bridges and not a lot of other people that you may have heard of. Described as laughable, San Fran crap. I think this is one to avoid. Uncivil Liberties is set in the near future where the government resorts to heightening surveillance of its own citizens in the name of security, while domestic extremists boldly rebel and take up arms in resistance. Little independent film that went direct to video back in 2006. Gets some pretty good reviews, as it deals with some unsettling topics. The Sandman from 1995 is yet another film from J.R. Bookwalter, however this one does not review as well as some of his other ones. Gary is a trailer park romance novelist who can't seem to get to sleep at night. He also thinks he saw a monster assaulting his girlfriend while she was sleeping. People in his trailer park begin to die in their sleep. Soon Gary's friend begins to think that he has gone crazy with all his ranting and raving, and he needs a good night's sleep. But Gary is afraid to sleep. That's the plot synopsis. That doesn't even make any sense, really. It doesn't have a hook or anything to draw you in. Bonfire of the Vanities, Tom Hanks, Bruce Willis and Melanie Griffith is a thriller from the 1990s directed by Brian De Palma, described as a book that could never be filmed. They filmed it, and reportedly it's dreadful. I remember watching it once when I was quite young, thinking, wow, Tom Hanks and Bruce Willis in the same movie, and I didn't quite understand what was happening, and I have never watched it since. I was quite engrossed by it, even at a young age, but it might be worth watching again. De Palma's always worth watching. Doom Asylum is a cult classic from 1987, about a demented coroner who uses autopsy equipment to kill off teenagers who trespass on a long-abandoned asylum that he happens to inhabit. As one reviewer describes it, the holy grail of B-movies. Kristen Davis from Sex and the City appears in a very early role. If you're looking for something schlocky and gory to put on this Halloween, this might be what you want. Christmas Lilies of the Field stars Billy D. Williams as Homer Smith, who returns to the chapel which, years before, he helped to build, to find that the nuns have taken a group of homeless, unwanted, runaway children. Once again, he is inspired by the nuns' faith of selfless devotion, and this time he builds an orphanage and a little school for the children. A feel-good classic for Christmas, and a pre-Lando Calrissian Billy D. Williams. Starring a pre-Lando Calrissian Billy D. Williams. Last week we had the third and fourth installment of the Jack Reed series. This one is the last one, the fifth one, Death and Vengeance, where Jack Reed is investigating a mass murder that occurred in a cemetery in broad daylight. 3 Russian immigrants lie dead, whilst Jack Reed also has to investigate the son of a prominent politician who's committed vehicular homicide and tries to broker a secret deal. Manhattan Chase is an action film with Cynthia Rothrock. After being released from prison, an ex-gangster, Lauren Avedon, finds himself on the opposite side of crime when he becomes involved in a matter of stolen heroin. The last film of director Jeffrey Hall, who directed an insane amount of ninja, zombie and Terminator movies during the 80s. This does seem to be getting quite a bit of love, especially from Cynthia Rothrock fans. A second Cynthia Rothrock movie, Honor and Glory, has arrived, also directed by Godfrey Ho. This is, again, not hailed as one of her best, where Rothrock plays FBI agent Tracy Pride on a mission to capture businessman Jason Slade, who is involved in extortion and murder, teaming up with her sister Joyce, a news reporter, Dragon, Tracy's partner in Hong Kong, and Jake, a bodyguard who worked for Slade. Can they stop Slade before it's too late? Sounds a bit like the A-Team, and probably just as much fun. Bloodthirsty Butchers is a horror film from 1970 about a murderous barber and his equally psychotic friend, a baker, who hatch a plan whereby the barber murders people and the baker makes them into pies to be sold in his shop. This is a British horror film and described by many as awful, terrible, bloodthirsty nonsense. A steaming pile of garbage, the lesser-known Sweetie Todd, and is directed by Andy Milligan, who is well known for his nasty and depraved approach to movies. Night of the Demon from 1980 is a notorious horror film that was on the Video Nasties list back in the day. This is about Bigfoot, and it's got excessive amounts of gore. It centres around Professor Nugget and one of his students try to track down Bigfoot, but end up uncovering something more sinister at work. I think this is a kind of an amazing thing to have on British television now, considering how banned it was back in the day, and now you can freely watch it. I'm interested to see just how uncut this is and if it's got most of the gore effects removed. Some say that it's the greatest Bigfoot movie ever made. Others just say it's full of slimy gore and gratuitous nudity. One way or another, it sounds worth watching. Witchcraft from 1988. Not the one with Linda Blair and David Hasselhoff, the other one. This is about a new mother and her child who move into her mother-in-law's dark old mansion. She soon begins to suspect that neither the house nor the mother-in-law are quite what they seem to be. This is the first in a long series of movies. I believe they're up to part 16 now, and the first one I have seen. It's actually quite boring. Nothing really very much happens, and it's just a bit of a rip-off of Rosemary's Baby, if anything. Oh, blimey, right. Witchcraft 2, The Temptress, I have also seen. I actually had a really big crush on Delia Shepherd after this movie when I was quite young. However, in this one, the witch from the first Witchcraft movie stalks a now teenage child. She attempts to kill his friends in order to slowly corrupt him to Satan. This is the first in the series that I actually saw before the first one, and whilst I don't think it affected the plot very much, I wasn't really watching it for that. Looking at it now, it seems to be pretty awful. Ah, brilliant. Witchcraft 3, The Kiss of Death. In this one, a warlock refuses to have his powers used for evil, but comes across another who isn't bothered by such trivial matters. But when the evil warlock falls in love with the good warlock's girlfriend, he decides to get rid of his competition. I haven't seen this one. Unfortunately, after 2, I decided not to watch any more of the Witchcraft series. I must be missing out on something since there's 16 of them. Some say this is better than the first 2. I'll leave that up to you to find out. Witchcraft 4. Great. The Virgin Heart. This is the 4th in the Witchcraft series. Rock musicians are selling their souls to the devil for fame and fortune. An attorney with magical powers attempts to stop it. I'm guessing some chicks get naked and stuff happens. Oh, yeah, okay. Hooray, Witchcraft 5 is on there too. Dance with the Devil. An evil warlock takes over a rock club. He uses beautiful, large-breasted and frequently nude women to try to collect enough souls so that he may be able to bring Satan to earth. Please, 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 please don't let Amazon do all 16 of them. Tainted! Hooray, not Witchcraft. This is a sadistic comedy thriller about a vampire who sets out to infect the blood of a hospital and 20-something slackers who set out to stop him. Appears to be a trauma movie, not that that's a bad thing, and some people say that it's better than you'd expect. Another trauma movie here after the Witchcraft and Tainted. Amazon must be doing a deal with Trauma to get all their stuff on there. This one is called They Call Me Macho Woman, about a traumatic superheroine Susan Morris who has to learn to fend for herself when she decides to escape from the urban jungle. While looking for a charming house in the country, she falls into the clutches of a band of brawny brutes, and she has to turn into a fearsome female warrior to escape imprisonment from the gang and set out for revenge. However, she metamorphosizes into a heroic woodland creature. Sounds very trauma-esque. It's from 1991. It does seem to have quite a bit of presence online and a lot of people enjoying it. Might be worth a watch. Fertilize the Blaspheming Bombshell stars Bo Hopkins? Singled out and seduced by the maniacal minions of Satan himself, the bombshell from Brooklyn is taken to the fiery pits of Beelzebub's lair, and there, from the bowels of hell, comes the blood-curdling command: fertilize the blaspheming bombshell. Made in 1990, this horror film does appear to be one of the classic awful movies, much like Manos Hands of Fate. One of those late-night American cable movies that was a nod to the horror films of yesteryear. Cloud Atlas is back on Amazon Prime, starring Tom Hanks and Halle Berry. This film is an exploration of how the actions of individual lives impact one another in the past, present and future, as one soul is shaped from a killer into a hero, and an act of kindness ripples through centuries and inspires revolution. Terror Firmer, one of the better known trauma films, actually directed by Lloyd Kaufman. A homicidal lunatic is running around the city, and the only people who can stop him are the trauma film crew. Terror Firmer is the most action-packed and personal, most bizarre and most commercial celluloid adventure in the 25 years of trauma entertainment. And in saying that, I've actually never seen it, but here it is on Amazon Prime, so I may as well. Described as disgusting, sick, perverse, but oh so funny. Danger, Deceit and Dust. The Wild West of 1886 is no place for a woman, but it's the perfect place for the rowdy girls. Fabulous females fighting for fortune and freedom on the frontier. This one stars Shannon Tweed, Julie Strain and Deanna Brooks. It's essentially trauma in the Wild West, without the gore, but lots of flesh instead. And finally, my pick of the week is actually a J.R. Bookwalter movie. This is The Dead Next Door. It's an unheard of classic from 1989 that is inspired by The Evil Dead and uses all kinds of nods to franchises and horror icons from the 1980s. It's essentially a love letter to that decade. An anti-zombie team is assembled by a government to cope with the ever-growing undead infection and a religious cult of people protecting the zombies. This is a no-budget zombie movie and one of the very best examples of how to do a no-budget zombie movie. It features some ridiculously good gore effects, a cast that includes the likes of Scott Spiegel and the voice of Bruce Campbell. It's a cult classic in every respect. And if you want something schlocky and gory to watch this Halloween, I heartily recommend this with a good big bottle of beer. So thanks very much for watching. Remember to hit that subscribe button down below. Let us know in the comments below which is your favourite or what you're going to be watching this Halloween. And check out our other video, What's New on Netflix.